Well, I think, if you look at it objectively, Rishi Sunak, he's a class act. He always performs better. He's very slick. He's very smooth. He's got all the answers to every question. Liz Truss tends to falter. But her vision, her slightly more radical, more immediate platform, really, in terms of tackling issues like tax cuts, seems to be cutting across as a more appealing proposition to Tory voters. But that's at least what the polling is saying right now. The most interesting poll will come next week after voting has started, and then we'll see. But, my head says Rishi Sunak's right on the policy issues. Heart says I think Truss is going to win.
What about you? Who won for you last night in that debate?
Well, I was quite surprised, actually, simply because Rishi Sunak has been perceived to be, not particularly good in these debates. Admittedly, Liz Truss was a little bit wooden to start with. But, I think most people felt she came out on top overall. But last night, I think it really talked to Rishi Sunak. I mean, I think it's a surprise to anybody, isn't it? This guy's been in charge of the economy for the last couple of years, and really things have gone pretty badly wrong. But he did feel as if he was in his comfort zone. And so, frankly, because the ballot papers are going out as we speak, this might be a late surge by Rishi Sunak. I don't believe he's going to win, but I think it could potentially be closer than people were predicting a week or two ago.
Well, Sean, Tom Harwood was here earlier explaining that audience for the debate last night was made up of undecided Conservative Party members. And at the end of the session, 2/3 of those had sided with Rishi Sunak. And I was considering what that tells us about which of them would do best if they were leading the party into a general election, because by that measure, Rishi Sunak could possibly win over more people than Liz Truss.
Yes, I mean, I've worked in leadership election myself, and the classic conundrum between voters is often who's got the best political platform that appeals to me as a Conservative, and I think Truss has probably got that. But the other question in your mind is who will beat the Labour Party? And at the end of the day, the Conservative Party, it's 400 years old and it's had more or less ideological leaders along its way. But at the end of the day, it's usually a really quite pragmatic party. What it wants is to beat the Socialists, beat the Labour Party, and make sure you have a serious government that can control the economy in power. And that's why I wasn't surprised that the audience tended to pick Sunak, because, I mean, as you were saying, our colleague here, he was in his comfort zone because a lot of the questions were about the economy and what he would do to try and get inflation under control, cost of living. And he's got all the answers to that because obviously he's a former Chancellor of the Exchequer and he's a former banker and he knows finance very well. Liz Truss is less qualified on all of that. If people are looking for somebody to beat the Labour Party again, I think they'll probably pick Sunak. But the question is whether they'll prioritise that over, can we finally get a Conservative agenda pushed out? Because we haven't had one. We've had rising taxes, we've had rising regulation, and a lot of the Conservative Party base wants that deregulation supply side reform platform.
Andre, do you agree that actually Rishi Sunak could be more popular with the wavering voters who maybe aren't party members of any particular shade, who are those who they will want to vote for Conservatives at the next election? My suspicion is that Rishi Sunak is not that popular with the public. I don't think he appeals to that many normal people.
No, and I think the Conservative Party in general has failed to recognise the catastrophe that they've meted upon themselves. Whilst I'm in Windsor here, which is the classic sort of blue wall seat, I'm originally from the red wall, from Lee. And if you think about those voters, some of these seats had huge majorities for the Labour Party. I think that Andy Burnham held Lee with a 25,000 majority at one point. Obviously went over to the Conservatives in 2019. There was that great hope that these people would vote Conservative for the first time and the Conservatives wouldn't let them down. I think it's fair to say that pretty comprehensively the Conservatives have let them down. Now, the big advantage the Conservatives have got is the Labour Party is the first political party in history to fire its own voters. Keir Starmer absolutely can't stand ordinary Labour people and certainly was keen to undermine them during Brexit. But, I've got to be honest with my friends and colleagues in Windsor Conservative Association. I don't think that they take this problem seriously enough in the red wall. And certainly this idea of, we'll just move Boris out the way for somebody else because we didn't like what he did over Partygate. I don't think it's going to be that easy. I don't think Truss or Sunak are particularly popular. My instinct is that Sunak is the worst of the two.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree. Sean, you said that Rishi Sunak is very slick, he's very polished, but he's too slick and he's too polished, isn't he, for a lot of British taste? Part of the appeal of Boris Johnson, love him or hate him, was the fact that he was rough around the edges and he had a philandering past, and he, a lot of people kind of, for whatever reason, they liked that about him.
Yes, so I think Sunak is a bit teetotal as well, so he might be the last person you want to go for a drink with. There's always a test, like, could I go for a pint with this guy? But yeah, I think you're possibly right. He reminds me of Tony Blair in a way. He's got an answer for everything. He's very slick. I just think that, I don't think either are brilliant performers, to be honest, and the teams around them really need to be strengthened. But on balance, I think Rishi Sunak is a more competent person. I'm slightly biased. I have an economics background, and I think what he's saying on the economy, although it's not very attractive or exciting, and we don't want to hear it, is the right thing. I can see a future in the next 2 years where the cost of living crisis really goes out of control, and the Tory party becomes incredibly unpopular.